Welcome everyone to the final video of the year. Today I'm going to play HeartGold with only Mewtwo. I'm doing this to get a sense for what my current peak performance is with my knowledge right now as well as my current skill. Then over the next year, 2025, we're going to be able to evaluate HeartGold results in context of Mewtwo's performance. And next year, like I did with Giratina in Platinum, I'll probably play Mewtwo again to get a sense for how much my skill and routing in the game has improved. Now, as we all know, Mewtwo is a fantastic Pokemon. Its base stats are absolutely busted. 106 HP, 110 attack, 90 defense and special defense, 130 speed, and 154 special attack. It's a legendary Pokemon, so of course it has a slow growth rate. This is my first attempt series in HeartGold, so I'm only using Hardy Natures, and Hidden Power is banned. In terms of move pool, it was really hard for me to fit everything on the screen. I left out tutor moves because Mewtwo just learns so many different moves. It starts with Confusion and Disable, then through level up, it doesn't really get anything that's going to be particularly useful in this solo challenge. It gets unique things like Miracle Eye, it gets Psycho Cut, Amnesia, which is good in Generation 1, but not really in this game, and it gets Psychic all the way at level 71, so unfortunately it's not going to have access to that move until I get to Kanto and pick it up from Mr. Psychic's house. That said, just glance at its TM and HM Learn set and you will see that this thing essentially has coverage of any type that it would want. So all my same type attack bonus options are limited. At least I start with Confusion, and from there I'm going to be able to rely on coverage moves throughout the majority of the Johto portion of the game. Of course, the rival's picking Chikorita, his strongest team, when it's neutral against my Pokemon. Also, Mewtwo's ability is Pressure, but I don't think that's ever going to be relevant for this solo challenge. We are never going to be stalling the enemy out. I assume most battles are going to be series of one-hits from my Pokemon. We'll just steamroll the leader and move on to the next one. Now, just doing a gauntlet of major battles, not talking about anything else, won't be particularly interesting, so I am going to take today as an opportunity to talk about the aesthetics of Pokemon HeartGold. It is my current opinion that these are the best looking 2D games in the entire franchise. Now, I know they don't rely exclusively on 2D graphics. A lot of the stuff like these buildings in the overworld are rendered in 3D. Ever since the beginning of Generation 4, Game Freak started to take this approach of blending 3D graphics with 2D graphics. I think it works really well in Generation 4. Everything looks nice and the 2D graphics blend well with the 3D graphics, and it never really feels like there are two competing worlds that just don't mesh well together. I can't say the same thing about Generation 5 though. It always feels like the graphics are just like oil and water, nothing is mixing well and nothing looks good. Personally, I think that the Generation 5 games are the worst looking games in the entire Pokemon series, and just because of those graphics, I do find myself at times not wanting to play the games. I have a whole host of critiques to levy once the games jump fully to 3D in Generation 6, but overall I far prefer that aesthetic over what happened in Generation 5. That said, if I had to pick between an aesthetic of 2D graphics or 3D graphics like they are in Generation 6 and onwards, I think in Generation 4 things are kind of perfect. All of the colors feel beautifully saturated, the pixel art is just so beautiful, it has just the resolution it needs to convey a lot of personality and detail. Also, I really do want to draw attention to the fact that in HeartGold your Pokemon follows you. I haven't mentioned this to this point in the series, but this is a feature that returns from Pokemon Yellow, one of my favorite games, if not my favorite Pokemon game of all time. The fact that the developers spent time making a 2D sprite of every single species so that they could follow you in the overworld just shows how much time and care went into creating these games. Interestingly enough, this feature shows us how little care went into some games later in the series like Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Okay, so of course Mewtwo has no problems in the early game. After finishing off Sprout Tower with my slow growth rate, I am only level 10, but I don't think I need more experience to take on the first gym leader, so I'll skip both of the trainers and head straight for Falkner. Mewtwo is currently on minimum battles, and it's able to one-shot Falkner's Pidgey. Okay, so Pidgeotto is probably going to be a 2-hit, and yes, I'm correct. Confusion also inflicts the status condition, and as a result, Pidgeotto just hits itself and Falkner deals no damage to Mewtwo before I finish him off. On Route 36, I pick up the Hard Stone. This will be relevant in just a moment, and I also grab the HM for Rock Smash. Progressing with my journey into Union Cave, I'm going to grab the TM for Rock Tomb. This is going to be fantastic against Bugsy. But before then, I have two more aesthetics that that I want to talk about. Number one, look at Slowpoke Well. They make you descend in this sort of spiral pattern into an actual well, rather than it just being a black tile like it was in Generation 2. When I was a kid, I had no idea how to progress with the game because I couldn't tell that you could walk on the tile until I accidentally stepped on it. In this case, it's pretty clear that it's a well and that there's a ladder that you could probably climb down, so nice job, Game Freak. As you enter the well, this is what I want to talk about aesthetically. Every time you go into one of these unique locations, there is a little piece of art that you get to see. So in this case, it shows a ladder going down into the well with a Slowpoke peering up at you. I have really enjoyed playing these games and looking at all of this art throughout this week. Also, at the bottom of the well, there is this one unique location where Kurt is standing, and I think a lot of care went into crafting this small location, which doesn't really have any main gameplay impacts. They very well could have left this out, but they didn't. And again, I just think this doubly emphasizes the fact that so much care went into making these games. I defeat all the mandatory trainers in Slowpoke Well. This is another location that benefits from the fact that they have overworld sprites for every Pokemon. You can literally see that there are cute little Slowpokes here, and unlike in Generation 2, where the Slowpokes always just looked really off in the overworld, these ones look fantastic. During the final battle against Executive Proton, Mewtwo levels up to 15, and here it can learn the move Swift. I teach this over Disable because that move is awful, and having a move that can't miss is nice, but I don't think it's going to get much play in this playthrough because just around the corner Mewtwo is going to get a major upgrade. But before that, I have to defeat Bugsy and the rival. With Mewtwo's ridiculous base stats, it can already move first against the Scyther, so I never have to fear U-turn, and I have the Hard Stone to boost the damage of Rock Tomb, so obviously I just one-shot. From there, his team is simple. We're gonna just move on to the rival. Ghastly goes down to a single hit from Confusion, then he sends in Zubat, which is weak to Confusion, so it also falls. Bayleaf is last, and up until now, this has been the Pokemon that has taken the least amount of damage from Mewtwo. I have to 3-hit it instead of 2-hitting. I just barely am not able to 2-hit, it survives with the Sliver of Health. Luckily, it doesn't use Synthesis, and then I knock it out. Okay, I said Mewtwo's gonna get some major upgrades. I play Voltorb Flip, earn a ton of coins, 40,000. This allows me to buy the TMs for Ice Beam, Flamethrower, and Thunderbolt. I'm gonna teach them all to Mewtwo now. So Ice Beam in the place of Swift, I never use the normal type move. Flamethrower in the place of Barrier, because I don't need to set up my defenses, I'm just attacking. And finally, Thunderbolt in the place of Rock Tomb. I hope everyone is ready to speed through the remainder of the game with these fantastic elemental moves. Against Whitney, you can see that I reordered my moves, putting Confusion in the 4th slot, because it is by far my worst move. I'm going to be spamming Ice Beam mostly because it has a chance to freeze, which is the best secondary status condition. Now, this is the first battle where we start to see the fact that the slow growth rate is holding Mewtwo back in terms of damage. I have to 2-hit the Clefairy, and the Miltank, like the rival's Bayleaf, is going to take 3 hits. Also, it uses Milk Drink, which is healing a little bit more than I'm doing with every successive Ice Beam. I figured eventually I would cause a status condition and just win. I do get the freeze, but then Miltank defrosts right away with a Lumberry. Okay, so maybe it's gonna stall me out and I'm gonna run out of Ice Beam PP. That would have been hilarious, but eventually Miltank just goes for Stomp. I think it might have run out of Milk Drink PP, although I'm not sure. Either way, Mewtwo gets another Ice Beam in, and that's it for Whitney. Now, technically, the next gym leader is Morty, who should have a type advantage against Mewtwo as a Ghost type specialist. But as Snowy likes to jokingly say, all Ghost types in Generation 2 are weak to Psychic type moves. And of course, this applies to Morty, so Mewtwo isn't going to have any problems against him. Now, as I make my way towards Ecruteak City, I want to pick up one of the held items that's available, so I can loop around after visiting the Pokemon Center, jump over this little ledge, and talk to Sunny to get access to the Magnet. This will boost the power of Thunderbolt by 20%. I have technically missed 2 of the other held items that were available to this point in the game. After beating Faulkner, I could have backtracked to the first route of the game and picked up the Twisted Spoon to boost the power of Confusion, but I didn't think Mewtwo needed it, and I didn't want to do the backtracking without Fly. I could have also grabbed the Charcoal in Azalea Town after saving the Farfetch'd in the forest, but I didn't think this small amount of backtracking was really worth it either, plus Flamethrower tends to be the weakest of the elemental moves throughout the mid-game. I'm going to be relying on Ice Beam and Thunderbolt far more. Okay, so now we're in Burned Tower, let's face the rival. As you would expect, it's going to be simple. Confusion one-hits both the Ghastly and the Zubat. On the Bayleaf, I use Ice Beam, it gets a one-shot, and then the Magnemite goes down to Flamethrower. With him out of the way, now it's time for Morty. Confusion. one hit. The Twisted Spoon would have helped here a little bit. I guess the only Pokemon that could survive is Gengar. And it does, just barely, with the tiniest sliver of red health. But Confusion inflicts the status, Gengar hits itself, so Morty never gets to attack. With my next Confusion roll, I get better damage, and Gengar faints. The final Haunter's easy to clean up, so I've earned myself the 4th badge. Of course, I'm gonna go face Chuck next, so as I pass through Olivine City, I want to draw your attention to just how beautiful this place's aesthetic is. There are these ornaments hanging from posts, this house that is like a green color, and then down here by the Pokemon Center, there's also a different aesthetic of house. It's really cool how much diversity there is in a location like this. Also, the lighthouse got a major aesthetic overhaul, and they also shuffled around the positions of a bunch of the trainers in here. Some of the ones in Pokemon Crystal that used to be mandatory are no longer mandatory. Other ones that were mandatory now can be skipped. Plus, trainers like Theo here are spinners, so he'll occasionally catch you when in Generation 2 you can always skip him. By the way, the reason I know his name is just because he has 5 Pidgeys and they're terrible experience. I always want to avoid him, but sometimes when I'm playing badly, I occasionally have to battle him. Okay, so at the top of the lighthouse, we actually have what looks like an observation level, which is really beautiful. It's far better than what they had going on in Generation 2. Also, this is another area where having an Ampharos sprite in the overworld really adds to the aesthetics of the game. With that finished off, now let's head into Chuck's gym and stomp the fighting type specialist. Primeape is first. Confusion doesn't one-shot. He uses a Hyper Potion, so I have to take 2 more turns to knock it out. Then Poliwrath comes in, and in this case, Thunderbolt also does not one-shot. Okay, well done, Chuck. I was actually expecting Mewtwo to do just a little bit more here. I take some damage from Surf and knock his ace out on the next turn, so overall not a difficult fight, but it was slower than I was expecting. With his badge, I can fly back to New Bark Town and pick up the Twisted Spoon with minimal backtracking. At the Lake of Rage, I grab the Choice Specs, which has the potential to be fantastic with Mewtwo. Getting 50% more special attack seems kind of unfair, and I wanted to try this out against Price, so let's see how it does. In this case, I can't use Thunderbolt because the Piloswine is a ground type, so I'm going to choose Flamethrower. And unfortunately for me, it's doing pathetic damage to the Seal. I know I'm only 3 levels higher than it, but I was expecting a little bit more here. Luckily, Icy Wind doesn't do very much to me before I knock out Price's lead. But it did attack me 3 times in a row, lowering my speed to 42, so I am slower than the Piloswine. As a result, I have to tank a Blizzard before knocking it out with a single Flamethrower. This leaves Mewtwo under half health. This is the closest any fight has gotten so far in this playthrough. Dugong is last, it moves first, hits with Aurora Beam, Mewtwo goes down to 32 hit points, my Flamethrower does less than half, it hits with 1 more Aurora Beam, bringing me to 13 hit points, and now unless I crit, I am going to lose. Mewtwo doesn't get it, so Price ends up winning. This battle taught me an interesting lesson. I think in solo challenges, the Choice Specs as an item are similar to Guts as an ability. They're really good in other formats, so they seem like they're going to be good in this format as well, but overall, it's probably just better to hold a type boosting item like the Magnet for a battle like this. When you're using only one Pokemon, the ability to switch between all of your different moves is critical, unless you're running a Pokemon that is railroaded into using a single move, like, I don't know, a normal type spamming Return all the time except against Ghosts. I'm sure I'm going to find some uses for the Choice Specs in future runs, but for now with Mewtwo, I'm going to avoid it most of the time. Jasmine's next. Flamethrower isn't more than enough for her. I one-shot both the Magnemites. The Steelix is last. I was expecting to 2-hit here, but no, Mewtwo has the special attack it needs to one-shot her ace. Petrol, he has poison types. I have Confusion and the same type attack bonus, so this one's really simple. The rival in the underground continues the spree. I one-hit the Golbat, the Haunter, the Sneasel, the Magnemite, but the Meganium is bulky enough to just barely survive. That said, it doesn't dish out a single hit point of damage before going down on the next turn. Executive Archer is last, he has a Houndoom, but this thing isn't very good. Although Mewtwo's not very over-leveled, it's only 1 level higher, so when Houndoom hits with Bite, it still does decent damage. This leaves me a little bit worried for Karen's Houndoom that's coming up during the league. In Ice Path, I pick up the Nevermelt Ice to boost the power of Ice Beam, and then I go up against Claire. I'm still holding the Magnet here. Mostly, I just don't want to spend time switching items. The menus in HeartGold are quite slow, so avoiding them saves time. Thunderbolt one-hits the Gyarados, as you would expect, and I'm pretty sure I'm still going to be able to one-shot the Dragonairs even though I don't have the Nevermelt Ice. I knock out the first one, then she sends in Kingdra. In this case, Thunderbolt is the better move. It looks like it does just a little bit less than half, and her ace uses Smokescreen, lowering Mewtwo's accuracy. Either it was a visual phenomenon or I roll better damage because Kingdra faints on the next turn, leaving only one Dragonair. The accuracy drop does not prevent my attack from hitting, and this one faints to a single hit as well. Okay, this video is going by in record time. We have all of the Johto badges, but next are the Kimono Girls, the trainers that have caused many a problem in these solo challenges. The first one has an Umbreon, which is a bad lead for Mewtwo to have to go up against, but I guess from here everything gets easier. Thunderbolt gets a critical hit, but it still doesn't have enough damage to knock out the bulky Dark type. Umbreon chooses Dark Pulse, which does massive damage, also getting a critical hit. It does more than half to Mewtwo, roughly 3/4. My next Thunderbolt knocks it out. Espeon is next. Ice Beam can't one-shot, so I take more damage from another critical hit Psychic, leaving Mewtwo on only 2 hit points. Flareon that follows has Quick Attack, so it finishes Mewtwo off. This is really the first reset that Mewtwo got. The one with choice specs is all player error. But in this case, the reset is only because of bad luck. 2 crits in a row was quite unlucky. Before fighting the Kimono Girls again, I do a little bit of exploring, going into the Whirl Islands to collect a hidden rare candy, as well as in Mount Mortar to grab one more. I'm not going to be skipping these with Mewtwo this time around. Maybe next year I will have figured out better strategies and I will be able to skip some rare candies to save some time, but right now I just don't have the experience to feel confident doing that. I come back to the Kimono Girls. This time I freeze the Umbreon, which is perfect, so I knock it out for free. After that, everything is much easier. Espeon does not get a critical hit. I'm able to one-shot the Flareon with my own critical hit. Jolteon just boosts its evasion with Double Team and I don't miss. And finally for Vaporeon, I have super effective damage with Thunderbolt. But Mewtwo doesn't have enough damage. Vaporeon uses Surf. Luckily, nowhere near enough damage, so that's that. Okay, cinematic time. Ho-Oh coming to the bell tower is really awesome. Also, the size of its sprite in the overworld is truly legendary. They did a really good job making this Pokemon feel extremely impactful. Again, the aesthetics of this game are just so on point. Victory Road is next. I have to mention the rival here. All of his Pokemon are one-hits. Yes, every single one. Even the Meganium this time around. With him out of the way, now it's time for Mewtwo to go up against the Elite Four. Will is first, and technically the Psychic type resists the Psychic type, but I have the type diversity I need to still have super effective damage against every single one of his Pokemon. Ice Beam for both the Xatu and the Executor, Flamethrower for the Jinx, and Thunderbolt for the Slowbro. Koga's next, Flamethrower for all of his bug types, Confusion for the Muck. It does poison me with Toxic, but the Crobat's not going to have enough time unless it gets ridiculously lucky with Double Team. Although it doesn't even have a chance to use it because Mewtwo is faster, and I can knock out with one hit from Ice Beam. That leaves only a Venomoth, but the Dark type doesn't stand a chance either. Bruno, Confusion isn't able to one-hit the Hitmontop, which is really frustrating. Anyways, I one-shot the Onix after that. I have to two-hit the following Machamp, two-hit the following Hitmonlee, well, unless it didn't knock itself out in Confusion. After that, Hitmonchan is also a two-hit, so Bruno uses a healing item. This fight was ironically very slow, but still really easy. However, this is where things really do get difficult for Mewtwo. Umbreon is taking 3 hits to knock out with my elemental moves. I one-shot the Gengar with Confusion and then learn Psycho Cut in its place. Murkrow goes down to a single hit, but then Houndoom comes in. I go for Thunderbolt doing more than half, but the Citrus Berry heals it out of KO range. Houndoom sets up Nasty Plot, survives one more attack, and even though I paralyzed it, it still attacks with Dark Pulse, dealing massive damage with its boosted special attack, and Mewtwo faints. I was starting that fight at level 49, so I'm going to use 11 rare candies to try the fight again at level 60. If I ensure that I two-shot the Houndoom, that it can never set up with Nasty Plot. This makes the battle really simple. I'm just hoping I won't need those rare candies later on for a slightly higher level at the end of the game. Lance, the champion, is last. I have fantastic moves here, so what are you expecting? I'm going to one-hit pretty much everything, if not everything on his team. I think the Pokemon that has the highest probability of surviving is the Charizard, which Lance sends in third. I go for Thunderbolt, and Mewtwo gets the one-shot. Next he sends in his Ace Dragonite, which has a nature that boosts its special defense, so it's most likely to survive my Ice Beam, but even it can't. So I clean up his final 2 weaker Dragonites, and with that, Mewtwo has defeated the champion for the first time. Hall of Fame room. This place has an amazing aesthetic. I love how like orange and sort of red it is. It really does look like the place where they would store the records of all of the champions. Although I have to say the following Hall of Fame animation where it registers all your Pokemon does not look particularly good in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of all of the black against red they're doing here for the shadows. I don't know, it just doesn't look great in my opinion. As I've been playing this series, this has been the only aesthetic that has stuck out to me as something slightly less than what I would have desired. And when this is the criticism that I levy on a game, that's how I know that it's really close to perfection. It also has moments like this with the SS title, another little cute cinematic that they spent time creating. Now that I've made Kanto, let's pick up the TM for Psychic and replace Confusion with it. I just didn't end up teaching Psycho Cut the second time around because I didn't think I would need it, and I was right. Mewtwo has no resets against Erica, Sabrina, Misty, and Surge. Another beautiful aesthetic, Snorlax hanging out here right by Diglett's cave. This overworld sprite for Snorlax is perfection. Every time I see this when I'm doing one of these playthroughs, I get a little bit happier. Continuing with the gym leaders, Mewtwo has no resets against Brock, Blaine, or Janine. Maybe Blue will be difficult enough to stop me. Executor's first, Ice Beam gets the one hit. Rhydon second, Ice Beam continues its spree. Machamp goes down to Psychic easily, but then Arcanine does survive one of my same type attack bonus hits. It uses Flare Blitz, which is physical, doing about a third, and then it knocks itself out with recoil damage. Alright, so Thunderbolt's gonna manage the Gyarados, and I have Ice Beam for the Pidgeot. This was another easy gym battle. Like I said before, I'm going to continue collecting rare candies so that I get all of them with Mewtwo. Inside the Whirl Islands, I want to draw your attention to the rare candy in Lugia's chamber. This location is beautiful. Look at the waterfall. Again, A+ for aesthetics. Time for the league rematches, and for a little bit of a surprise. Will is first, and I run into an issue here. While his first 5 Pokemon aren't an issue, the final Pokemon is Gardevoir, and he sets up with Calm Mind using it, and then heals. Mewtwo is slowly doing less and less damage, and as Will starts to attack, I am taking more and more damage. Now, one of the reasons I didn't use Calm Mind myself with Mewtwo is because this TM is walled off in the Battle Frontier. The only way to get it is to purchase it using 48 BP, and Mewtwo is one of the Pokemon that is banned from the Battle Frontier. So in a solo challenge using only Mewtwo, there is no way to obtain this move. Because of the powerful setup move, I end up taking a reset here. The way that I get around this is I use Ice Beam turn 1 for maximum damage. Gardevoir sets up with Calm Mind, and then I use Psychic for minimal damage. This is so that Will doesn't choose to use a healing item. Then I can go back to Ice Beam and get the knockout. Koga is a bit surprising. I went into this fight without healing, but I'm not able to one-shot the Skuntank, so it does a little bit of damage to me, bringing Mewtwo to orange before I knock it out over 2 more turns. From there though, everything is straightforward, so I make it through the battle, but with orange health. I figured I would explain that because if I cut into the battle with low health, you'd probably wonder what had happened. Bruno's next, and he is straightforward now that I have Psychic. I should mention here that Mewtwo has 228 speed, so it's faster than everything else in the game. Up until now, my HeartGold series has been revolving around this stat, so it's nice to not have to think about it in this run. As I defeat Bruno, Mewtwo is level 70, and I use 7 rare candies before going into the battle against Karen to give myself the best possible chance. Flamethrower one-shots the Weavile, Ice Beam 2 hits the Spiritomb, but I do get confused in the process. She heals it, and then Mewtwo snaps out of confusion before I knock the Ghost type out. Absol is a one-shot, Umbreon follows. Ice Beam is going to 3-hit here because of a Citrus Berry. This gives time for Umbreon to set up with Curse, but because it sets up twice, it's not able to attack and I knock it out for free. Honchkrow goes down to a single Thunderbolt, leaving only the Houndoom. Unlike last time, I have more than enough damage to knock it out over 2 turns, and it just goes for Dark Pulse right away. Without Nasty Plot, it can't do enough damage, and Mewtwo is victorious. Up until now, I have spent so many of these videos hyping up the second Lance battle, and today I have not had to do that once. Mewtwo is going to crush him, and any Pokemon that has Ice Beam is likely going to do the same, provided they have just enough speed. In this case, I one-shot every single one of his Pokemon, which is a very satisfying way for me to end this series this year. That leaves only 1 trainer in the game. Right now it is possible that Mewtwo will do this under 2 hours and 30 minutes, earning itself the only S tier placement in my tier list. So let's see how Red goes. First is Pikachu, I go for Psychic, and Mewtwo is able to one-shot. That means there is no risk of paralysis. Next, Red chooses to send in Snorlax because it has Crunch, which is super effective. My Psychics are doing what looks like a third, but maybe not enough to get the 3 hit. I am lucky here because Snorlax doesn't have Amnesia, so it's unable to boost its already ridiculous special defense stat. Although with how much damage Crunch is doing, by the time Mewtwo knocks the Snorlax out, the hail damage gets me. I come back into the fight replacing Flamethrower with Rest and holding a Chesto Berry. This is so I can heal at least once during the battle. Although this time around the Snorlax finishes me before I get it. That's not good. I have 2 rare candies left over that I haven't used. I wanted to see if Mewtwo could do it, but I'm going to go up to level 80 now and hope that this gives me the damage I need for the Snorlax. It kind of does, but Red uses a full restore after hail damage in this case, prolonging the time that I have to face the bulky bear. I miscalculated thinking I would survive a hit from the Snorlax, but I don't, so I take a 3rd reset to Red. In the next battle I heal, but at the same time the Snorlax is healed by a full restore, which puts me back in the position I was in before. Also, Crunch has lowered my physical defense, so this fight spirals out of control, giving Mewtwo a 4th loss. Up until now in the run, it's mostly been player error, and then some small locations where I just needed to anticipate using rare candies, and I lost once because I didn't. But Red is the first trainer that's an actual threat for Mewtwo. I kept trying because I was thinking eventually I'll lower the Snorlax's special defense, and if I can knock it out without using my Chesto Berry, then the remainder of the battle should be fairly simple. I have super effective damage against the Lapras, the Charizard, and the Blastoise in the form of Thunderbolt, and super effective damage against the Venusaur in the form of Psychic. In the next battle, I do less damage to the Snorlax with each hit, and this is actually a good thing because Red doesn't use his full restore. As a result, I knock it out for the first time and move on to the Lapras. Okay, I think this is going to be it. I use Rest to heal, the Chesto Berry to wake up, Lapras hits with Blizzard and does way more damage than I was expecting. But I should just one-hit with Thunderbolt. And the answer is, no way. The Lapras survives with orange health. After all, it is the same level as Mewtwo. So when I knock it out, I'm back at red health. I move on to the Blastoise, but I'm not feeling particularly hopeful now. I use Rest to heal up, Blastoise chips away at me using Blizzard. Luckily though, in this case, my ability Pressure will be useful. If I heal, it's gonna run out of Blizzard and then start using moves like Focus Blast, which can miss, or Hydro Cannon, which has a recharge turn. Thing is, it brings me back down to red health. Now, I underestimated how much damage Thunderbolt was going to do. I thought I would attack it once during the recharge turn and then use Rest, but in this case I knock it out, so I move on to the Venusaur and I have low health. I decide to go for Rest again to heal up, but this is a bad choice. Giga Drain does massive damage with a critical hit. As a result of 2 more Sludge Bombs, the Venusaur knocks Mewtwo out. I tried with the choice specs and just spamming Psychic, like maybe this can work out with a ridiculous special attack stat, but then the Lapras freezes me, and in the very next battle, the Snorlax freezes me. I can't believe it. I did make it by the Snorlax though to the Lapras, but then it finishes me with Blizzard because I can't use Rest to heal. Okay, so this fight is pretty rough. I revert back to the Resto Chesto strat and try again, but once again I get frozen by the Snorlax and this ends in defeat. I had a bit better luck in the next battle, making it to the Venusaur with orange health, but I use Psychic and find out that this cannot one-hit the powerful grass type. It puts Mewtwo to sleep with Sleep Powder, and that's another loss. Okay, there's a major change I can make to really help Mewtwo out here. Instead of holding the Chesto Berry, I'm gonna hold the leftovers so I heal a little bit of damage every turn. This effectively neutralizes the damage from the hail, and that gives me slightly more health every turn. Since Mewtwo is taking multiple turns to knock out each Pokemon, this healing really stacks up over the course of the battle. When I make it back to the Blastoise, I use Rest to heal a bunch, depleting its PP and its most powerful moves. When it starts using a move like Flash Cannon, dealing very little every turn, then I know it's my turn to attack. I go for Thunderbolt and knock out the Water Turtle. Venusaur's next. Psychic rolls better damage and one-shots. Okay, I'll take that. Charizard's last. I go for Thunderbolt. It survives, hits with Flare Blitz, but this does not do enough damage to knock out Mewtwo, and the recoil finishes Red's final Pokemon. My first result with Mewtwo in HeartGold is 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 46 seconds, with 13 resets, 0 blackouts, at level 80, with a game time of 7 hours and 29 minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna rank Mewtwo in the tier list, but before that, I'm gonna do a little bit of an extended thank you section at the end of this video. Throughout the year, so many other people help me make this content and bring entertainment to all of you who are watching at home. Or maybe you're watching at work to make the time a little bit more bearable. I do know that there are some people who are truckers who watch my content, and I want to give a specific shout out to them. Some of you have commented saying you really like my live streams because they're so long and they help you pass the time. Thank you so much for this feedback. I really like doing the live streams, but sometimes I feel like they're not received as well. So it is really helpful for me to hear that for some of you, that's the most important type of content that I make. That said, the regular content on this channel is still all quite long, and I could not pull off this kind of length without some help. And that's why my favorite item is the PP Up. Anyway, since it's the end of the year, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports me. If you have sent a super chat, subscribed as a member here on YouTube or on Patreon, you quite literally make this content possible, so thank you so much. And now for the people that contribute their time week in and week out making this content a reality. Brian does all of the thumbnail art, and I just want to highlight a couple examples that he has put together throughout December this year. These have been fantastic. Thank you so much, Brian. I think it really does add a lot to the channel that whenever you see one of my videos, it has custom art as a part of it. It's not just some reused Sugimori art that we see absolutely everywhere. While I absolutely love everything Ken Sugimori has done, having a little bit extra personality for each one of these videos really does push them to the next level, in my opinion. So thank you, Brian, for all of your tireless work making so many thumbnails throughout this year, especially at the end of the year. Speaking of art, we also have to say thank you to Serena Vale. Thank you so much for all of the art that you have contributed. Every time a random NPC trainer gets brought to life by you, it makes me a little bit more happy. Now, I do have to say Serena has incredibly high standards for their work, so we can't get as many of these trainers up on the channel as we might like. It would be amazing if we could have a new one every week, but there's just not enough time in the week to make that happen. Okay, the next one is a big category for this channel because so much programming work goes in behind the scenes to make these runs visually appealing for all of you. We try to front load as much of the production process as is possible so that when I'm recording the video, it looks great. Then we don't have to do a bunch of stuff in post-production, which always takes more time, and it's also much less efficient because it doesn't apply to the next video. For software help, there are many people that I need to thank. Weil, Dagron, Snowy, Flamesage, Autotonsorialist, Austin, and Dr. Harry. This group does so much, so I'll mention each one of them and one contribution they've made. Weil has been fantastically helpful in making the tier list software that lets us organize all of this to prevent spoilers from occasionally sneaking out, which was the case before when we made these all with Photoshop documents. Dagron built Pokebite from the remnants of GameHook. Snowy made the emulator Super Shucky, which I now use extensively on the channel for Generation 1 and 2. Austin coded the music software for my live streams so that the music is always synced with what I'm doing in-game. Autotonsorialist put together the routing software I use to check all my damage ranges and get really granular on the small details of these solo challenges. Dr. Harry put together all the graphic generation software that we use to show things like the timeline graphs at the end of every video, like this one for example. While Flamesage and the GameHook project are no longer present in the community, he did lay the foundation for much of the work that we have done over the last year. Also, in addition to all of these contributions, these people have helped me learn programming, and I can't say thank you enough to all of them. Peep manages the credit sequence, and along with Serena, puts together a monthly event for all of my Patreon and YouTube members who support me directly. Okay, two last categories to go through. First of all, everyone who makes solo challenges, especially videos here on YouTube. Thank you so much. Being able to review your work makes my job easier. I also hope that the work that I contribute to the community also makes what you do a little bit easier. If you're also running solo challenges just for your own interest and not making content out of them, if you post them over on my solo challenge Discord, it really does motivate me to get better results. Thank you to people like Zealous Pawn, Ike the Killer, Axu Karisora, and Red Ryosi for constantly posting new results that make me really jealous and feel a little bit bad as a player, but then it pushes me and motivates me to get even better at these games for all of you. The fact that optimizing and playing these games in this format has become a community effort makes me feel that no matter where this channel goes, it has at least been a success. Alright, now it's for the people who really do the heavy lifting. Exceptional works for the channel part-time, helping me out with every task that I just don't have time to fit into my busy schedule. And he's also there to help out when Sean needs him the most, because Sean has done a colossal amount of work editing all of these videos throughout the last year. If you've already left a comment on this video, perhaps edit it and include a thank you to Sean. If you haven't left a comment on this video, give Sean a major round of applause and a big thank you. He seriously deserves it after an exhausting fall working on all of these giant projects. Now, I wanted to say thank you to everyone in a special way this year, so I have released a ROM hack of Pokemon Yellow where I make all of the people who have made prominent contributions to the channel on a weekly basis into the gym leaders, Elite Four members, and prominent trainers throughout the run. I've also shuffled around some of the encounter tables to make things a little bit more interesting. Now, this ROM hack has not been tested, but I'm just putting it out there as something fun for all of you to play. There are a bunch of Easter eggs if you know the in-depth in and outs of this channel, so you can pick up on those as you go through the run. Anyway, now let's get back to Mewtwo and finally rank it in the HeartGold tier list. For Alligator's time was 2 hours, 43 minutes, and 19 seconds. Mewtwo today did better, but it was not able to get an S tier placement. So instead it gets itself a placement in the A tier. Honestly, I swear I did not make these thresholds before I played the runs. Conveniently, we have one Pokemon in every tier, except the S, C, and Impossible tiers. I had so much fun playing this game, I am really looking forward to incorporating it into my regular rotation. Now speaking of my regular rotation, up until now on the channel, we have expected one video every week, with occasional events where more videos are released, like Halloween or Daily December. Going forward in the new year, I have to put a lot of thought into if I want to continue doing things this way. Right now on the channel, I play a bunch of games: Red, Yellow, Crystal, Emerald, Fire Red, Platinum, and Heart Gold. That's a total of 7 games, and if I release one video every week, we are only going to get through the entire rotation once every month and a half, which to me feels a little bit unsatisfying. I'm gonna have to do some soul searching here and think on it, but coming in the new year, expect things to likely change. That said, this fall has been exhausting, so I'm gonna take some time off from releases. If you have made it this far, you are incredible. Thank you so much. I'll see you when I see you.